The other day I was talking to a close friend about converting my TV into a smart TV by using a NUC mini PC. Now that TV NUC combo can then run its own operating system like Windows 11, and it would allow playing PC games at 1080p, and it can network to my home network, things like my DVR or my NAS, while also having ample storage and a very low 10-watt power draw, so it can be powered on 24/7. Now in my search online, starting with my favorite YouTube channels of course, I then wound up browsing online marketplaces, and then I was trying to decide on which model of NUC would be the best. In terms of price, most modern hardware, the highest possible performance for the dollars, but without spending more than say $200 US. Halt right there. In this process I kept running into an irritating problem that prevented me from making a purchase. How do I know that the item I have found will be able to compete with all the tasks I want? Why do I keep finding NUCs that say they can do everything, but then I check the reviews and the message is less than positive? If I raise my price cap to say $600 US, the hardware looks to be way more modern and more powerful, but it's still not obvious that I will have the best item for the best price with the lowest power draw. Does all this sound familiar to you? Is there a solution? What is the problem we're even trying to solve? Why is buying new hardware so complicated? I have all these answers and more because I spend endless hours trying to solve the problem. But before I clarify the problem and offer the solution, I need to first make sure you and I are on the same page. The rapid evolution of personal computing has transformed not only the way we work, communicate, and socialize online, but it's also the very fabric of our daily lives. From that smart TV to smart washing machine to smart light bulbs, you name it, you probably have even more. It's incredible that the early days of room-sized colossal computers have managed to shrink down to the pocket-sized marvels we carry around today. However, there is one unresolved problem that continues to escalate as hardware becomes more advanced. And I am certain it has affected you in more than one aspect of your hardware requirements. But before I inform on the problem and the solution, I need to get you up to speed on where we stand with devices today. You would be familiar with the PC, like a Mac or a desktop PC, and that these can present in different sizes from the small tower to maybe the mid tower or even the full tower. These systems tend to be the most powerful hardware in our home network, and likely you spend most of your time on them. Or the even more impressive workstations or servers. Now these are less common, but you may have heard of them. The Workstation is essentially a server-grade PC that has been optimized to give extreme reliability for those seeking high performance from their hardware. Now servers on the other hand, and no I don't mean your home server, I mean the enterprise grade servers like those running ChatGPT's neural interface. Did you hear? It's like a network of 30,000 A100s, which house the most powerful GPU built to date, the NVIDIA V100s. Got like over 100 teraflops of deep learning performance with Tensor Core GPUs. Man, that's just insane hardware, but it makes sense. AI is incredible. Now, you likely also have experience with more portable versions of these, like the MacBook Pro or the Dell laptop. Now, these systems give you the opportunity to take a fraction of the computer power with you wherever you go. Now, naturally, the smartphone is optimized to be held in one hand, and the tablet is optimized for dual-hand operation. Now these systems also feature other tech like high-definition cameras and wireless communications. Now more recently there's been a spike in smart appliances, with most of the daily whiteware getting their own dose of a pocket-sized PC. Now talking pocket PC, do you remember the Harrier? It was literally called the Pocket PC. It came out like 2002, man am I that old? And it was a PC that ran Microsoft Windows Mobile. It had a little mini keyboard and a smartphone-like functionality. Way back, 2002, before the iPhone. That's incredible. Now, if you have not heard of it, maybe you have seen the iconic BlackBerry. That's in all the classic movies. Now, these devices introduced a new era of computing, which set the way for a plethora of technology found in smart devices. And in a way, Bill Gates far exceeded his vision for Microsoft in that there isn't just a computer on every desk, but there's also one in every possible aspects of our lives. As I check my smartwatch, you get the idea. Now back to that problem that I alluded to earlier. The issue with the advancement in technology is the prerequisite for advancement of naming conventions and technical jargon to better represent the complexity of modern hardware. From simple naming conventions like Pocket PC, a PC that fits in your pocket, that's easy, to something like the Intel NUC13VYKi5, which means Intel's next unit of computing NUC, 8th generation of Intel Core Celeron processor, so-called Cacao Canyon NUCs, the HKR model, which has the N3350 processor with 4GB of LPDDR3, so low power double data rate 3, soldered DRAM, that's dynamic random access memory, 64GB of eMMC, that's embedded multimedia card storage, and a combination of HDMI, so high definition multimedia interface, and EDP, the embedded DisplayPort. Do you see the problem, or do I need to reread that product description for clarity? Please say no. Now, earlier I did claim to have a solution, and that was technically clickbait. I apologize for that because there really is no solution, and it's only going to get worse as hardware continues to get more complicated over the years. So sorry, huge disclaimer there. But I don't want you to think that we have to remain hopeless in the modern maze of acronyms and technical jargon. Once someone explains what the modern terms mean, you will be able to better navigate the complex maze of self-guided knowledge on the complexities of the hardware. Now, I can't cover everything today, but I want to empower you on one specific item of technology, the NUCs. NUCs are the outcome of the need to reduce the size of desktop PCs to better tackle hardware demands of our small devices. Now, likely you need a NUC for something like your TV. Maybe you want to convert it to a smart TV to be able to run an operating system like Linux, Ubuntu, TrueNAS, Proxmox, Windows, or even macOS. This is where we're left with a unique opportunity. This video is going to be intense. We're going to look at NUCs, naming conventions, trying to find the best one, try and tear them down into a few different categories to really help you with your purchasing decisions. And I even give a few samples that I think are really good value in the modern day. Let's quickly jump into it right now. NUC guide. What should you look out for? Hopefully there's a simple process. Here's the solution. A little bit of effort required. Now, step one, decide on your intended use. One of the primary uses is probably going to be gaming, but there are others like the smart TV. We saw the demo earlier. Maybe you just want to use it for basic computing, or maybe you want to do some file server or NUS system using your NUC, or maybe you want to do some clustering, taking a whole bunch of those, turning them into a really cool system. Step 2, performance requirements. Really important to consider what's actually going to be packing within our machine. Now, keeping in mind those different categories that we had, we want to consider those categories. Then it's about deciding what's consuming too much power, especially if it's on 24/7. We do want responsiveness. It'd be really annoying if it was all like laggy. That's horrible. Now, we do want a high frame rate, particularly if we're doing gaming, and preferably a lot of SATA ports, or at least M.2 ports, if we seek to expand our storage. And hopefully at least like 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, preferably dual ports, maybe even 10 gigabit Ethernet. Do they exist yet? They're working on it, these NUCs, catching up. Now, our next consideration, step 3, the processor or CPU. Now, very important, most of these NUC systems will actually have the CPU integrated into the system itself. So we don't really have any options here for upgrade. But with a little bit of careful planning, you can actually get a system for which you are able to upgrade the CPU. That would be the better system to go for. Now, in terms of the options here, generally you're going to have to choose between Intel or AMD. And quick demo here of the model number, at least for an Intel system. This particular one's the NUC8CCHKR. To break that down, NUC is obviously the form factor. Now, most of these will come in either a Pico or a Nano ITX form factor. There may be some as large as a Mini ITX and maybe even Micro ITX, depends on the overall form factor, but those will usually be more ultra small form factor or small form factor. But still important considerations. Size them according to what you desire. This particular CPU is going to be the 8th generation, specifically the Cacao Canyon architecture and the HKR model. Step 4 is going to be RAM, or that memory. Now, most of these systems will have the option for RAM to be upgraded, but take care. Some of them are actually fixed or soldered, which means you can't upgrade the system even if you wanted to. And also keep note, not all of them will have 2 DIMM sockets. and these are SODIMM sockets, not normal DIMM sockets. You can't use your desktop RAM. It's going to be dedicated laptop RAM, these SODIMM modules. Now, in terms of speed, most of them will probably fall between DDR3 and DDR4, but keep an eye out for the DDR3s. They'll be a little bit older, hopefully cheaper. And in terms of memory speed, well, that's going to range depending on the form factor you obtain, but usually somewhere around 2666 megahertz up to maybe 5200 megahertz, depending on how new the system is. Now, again, looking at our reference example here, the Intel system that has soldered 4 gigabytes LPDDR3, so it's integrated, can't switch or upgrade. Step 5, storage. Can your system get some expanded storage? Well, again, a few things to keep an eye out for. Some of these systems are actually fixed, meaning there is no hope of upgrading the storage without going through the route of USB. Now, a key consideration is whether you can fit an SSD within the system or if there are M.2 slots. If you're not familiar with M.2, there's a few different form factors from the A, E, B, and M key. Very important to consider each of those. They have a slightly different key connector that allows only specified devices to connect to them, but generally they are usually suitable for expansion. Definitely check your particular system to be sure, and also keep an eye out for the onboard chipset. Now, looking at our reference model here, it's actually got an embedded 64 gigabyte eMMC chip which cannot be upgraded, but there is at least an M.2 slot fitting up to 22mm by 80mm M key devices, and even an M.2 22mm by 30mm E slot configuration. So that would allow you to expand at least an NVMe and a SATA device, which is quite handy. And I do believe there might be a B key on this particular one as well. You'll have to check that, but very important, check the M key. That one is the one you really want for your NVMe drives. Would it be able to boot to an OS from the M? Oh, that might be a bit tough going, but maybe with something like Clover, you can pull that off. Step 6 is going to be graphics. What should we be keeping an eye out for? Well, take note, all of these are going to have integrated graphics, but you may want to keep an eye out for the models that potentially have options for a discrete GPU. Again, these are going to be larger form factor systems usually. Take an eye on VRAM. Not all of them are going to have VRAM. Most of them are going to share memory with the CPU, but there will be some models that do not. How many CUDA cores does your GPU have? Is there an eGPU option? So external GPUs could be a great way to buff up the power. You could even go through the M.2 M key route. That's a fairly effective method, but you will bottleneck that GPU because there's only 4 lanes being connected, PCI lanes, so it's not quite going to be at full performance. But hey, that's still really cool, fitting a nice GPU on there. Now, reference model, it's got HD Graphics 500, so not the most powerful chip out there. Looking at 650 megahertz boost, about 96 CUDA, so it's on the low end, but it is enough to get the job done. And yes, shared memory on that one. Step 7, moving on to ports and connectivity. Very important to keep an eye out for all of these different options. And I'd say the most important port to make sure is there. It's probably going to be that 3.5mm audio jack. Now, there are USB routes for this, but it's just such a basic connector that you want just so you can do your headphones. Otherwise, it's really annoying. Check the number of USB, HDMI, DisplayPort, and even Ethernet ports. Some of them come with dual Ethernet ports, which is quite handy. And definitely check the speeds and type of each of those ports as well. Is it expandable? Can you expand? Can you add extra modules to allow you to run even more ports? That would be handy. Our reference model, pretty well equipped. We've got 3 USB 3.0s, one of which is actually an internal slot. There are 4 USB 2.0s, of which 2 are internal. There's a serial port, again, internal, should you need it. And even an Intel i2-1181 GBE network card, but that should be expandable because that would likely connect through your M.2 E key. So keep that in mind as well. You can easily upgrade usually to more modern cards, particularly if you need Wi-Fi and or Bluetooth of certain specifications. Okay, we're going well. Jumping on to step 8, form factor and size. Now check the sizing of your system. All of them should give you some basic measurements, which is quite handy. Check that reference measurement for our reference machine down there, 108 by 154 by 32. Those are all in millimeters. Sorry, I operate in millimeters. And with this knowledge, you should be able to scale more or less what the performance would be like in terms of cooling. If it's really, really small and compact, you're likely going to have some heat problems. Another key consideration is ease of access. Some of them have very simple access, push of a button. Others, well, maybe a few screws you got to deal with. And if you're really unlucky, you got to remove certain pads and get in behind stickers to really get into the system, which is really irritating. So keep an eye on that as well. Take note of the power connector. Not all of them have a proprietary connector, but there are some. So make sure you've got a standard connector so you can connect any applicable power supply. Most of these would be like 65 watts or thereabouts, depending on the system and the power draw. And I will add, some of them may even have an internal power supply. Again, depends on the size of your system that you're acquiring. Step 9, operating system compatibility. Can we take any operating system and install it on our NUC? Well, not necessarily. We do need to check to make sure that it is actually adaptable. Double check that there are drivers and that we can actually connect everything that we seek to do. Another key consideration there is AHCI storage mode as well as FTPM version 2 if you want to run something like Windows 11. If it's not there, the little chip set on the PCB, you will not be able to run Windows 11. It's an important consideration. And if you do go into that direction, you could also keep an eye out for UEFI to make sure you can actually install your target operating system. Very, very important. And in terms of our reference system, well, it is fairly adaptable. It does have AHCI and UEFI, as well as that TPM 2.0 chipset. So we can actually run most modern interfaces on this without any problems. That's really cool. Yay, step 10, upgradability. How well can our system handle future upgrades? Well, I definitely consider the RAM, storage, and CPU, maybe even the GPU. If those are soldered, well, you're really stuck. You're not going to be able to do too much. Definitely check the CPU's available PCIe lanes. If those lanes are really limited, by limited I mean like 8 or 9, you're probably not going to be able to run too many external devices. If there are many PCIe lanes, you will be able to plug in more hard drives or more expansion devices. But generally, even those M.2 slots will be limited to hopefully 4 lanes. Some of them may be 1 lane, but usually it's 4 lanes for those devices. Now, in terms of our reference module, it's got a nicely soldered Celeron N13350, so we can't replace it. The integrated HD 500 GPU can also not be upgraded, but we should be able to do an external GPU if we were really keen, using the M.2 M key slot, and there's also a M.2 E key slot, which we could also include another storage device on, so that's kind of cool. Okay, step 11, cooling and noise. How noisy is this system going to be? Well, you actually see a lot of them are fanless by design, but definitely check. If they have a cooler, they should run a little bit better. Double check fan RPM adjustment. Make sure you can actually do a little bit of modification on there. Check if there's a nice heatsink, particularly for things like the NVMEs as well. Some of them come out with nice NVMe heatsinks, which is a bonus. Check the case volume overall as well, and the design to see that there is enough airflow going through. Little air vents, always a good sign. And are they stackable? You may want to stack them to get a nice system going, clustering. Now, in terms of our reference example, it is fanless, and it does have a little bit of fan adjustment, but that's actually optional because, well, there's no fans to adjust. But you can always do something to get one running. That's the beauty. USB fans, right? Step 12, brand reputation and reviews. This is going to be really important for a lot of these systems, although naturally with Intel and AMD, you'd be safe in terms of the quality of the product. But for third-party products, definitely check out those reviews just to be sure you're getting a good deal. Now, also handy to consider supply. How many of these are running around? If there's only a few listed, well, that can't be a good sign. If there's thousands, that's probably a good model. Secondhand availability goes hand in hand, and are these durable? So that's where you're going to want to check reviews. Looking at our reference model, in a quick search, around 4 to 5 star online, so it's actually quite a good little unit, even though it's a bit dated now. And the 8th generation, would that still be viable today? Well, possibly. Remember, it's going to be a little bit cheaper than, say, the 13th or 14th gen, so that's a definite bonus. Step 13, power consumption. So how much power is our system going to pull? How much do I want it to pull? Those are the questions we want to know. Now, it's important to consider the CPU and GPU TDP. That will give you some indication of where it's going to go. Definitely check the reference idle and max load power draw. And if your model comes equipped with a PSU, make sure the max output there will match whatever you're planning to input into your system. Our reference model there's got a 6-watt CPU TDP, which isn't too bad. And we've got a less than 30-watt max power draw and around 5-watt idle power draw, which is perfect, or rather sleep power draw, probably higher on idle. It does come with a little bit of a PSU brick. Keep an eye for those. It's 19 volts, around 3 amp, 3.42 if you want to be specific, and 65 watt rating. So quite handy, but definitely keep an eye on those and the connector that comes with them to make sure you can actually power your system, especially if it comes without one. Sometimes that happens secondhand. Okay, step 14, warranty and support. Now, depending on where you're buying this, there may be no warranty or support if it's secondhand in particular, but if it's brand new, you will get a warranty, which is great. Now, important to consider the mean time between failure. Every company will usually publish that data in their technical white notes. Check it out, see how many hours the device is rated for and that it passed. Temperature range, very, very handy to check the estimated range or the normal range for your system, how much noise it could potentially produce, and obviously whether it's new versus secondhand, important consideration. Now, for the reference model, has passed a 50,000 hour mean time before failure testing, passed with flying colors, obtaining 50,000 hours for the mean time before failure. So you get a pretty good product. It's reliable, verified by Intel. Now, ample support being an Intel device as well, along with technical documents giving you a full breakdown of the system. Definitely check out those technical documents. Lots of good stuff in there. Well, I'm going to say you've graduated. You can now track down your new NUC with a little bit more knowledge. So hopefully you feel empowered. Let me know in the comments how you go with your system. And if you have any trouble, leave that in the comments as well. I'm sure one of us will be able to give you an answer for your system. But well done there. Hopefully you enjoyed that. I'll see you on the next video. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year as well. I'll see you on the next video.